Hello viewers, welcome to my channel. For more than 2 decades, Neko Case has carved out a singular place in the world of music. With her spellbinding voice, fearless songwriting, and unflinching honesty, she has always walked the line between the mystical and the painfully human. Whether fronting the new pornographers, crafting her own acclaimed solo albums, or lending her voice to collaborations across genres, Case has consistently wrestled with themes of love, nature, isolation, and mortality. But recently, she's been more candid than ever about the way death, something most of us try to avoid discussing, has shaped her art, her outlook, and her capacity to find beauty in sorrow. Death gives us so many gifts if you're willing to look at it, Case said in a recent interview, a statement that instantly captured attention for its paradoxical blend of comfort and discomfort. The idea of death as a giver, rather than only as a thief, is not what most of us are conditioned to embrace. Yet, for Case, leaning into that perspective has become a way of living more fully, of holding on to gratitude, and of finding poetry in even the most devastating experiences. A life in song and shadow. From her earliest recordings, Neko Case's music has been threaded with references to mortality. Her 2000 breakthrough album, Furnace Room Lullaby, was filled with gothic imagery, haunted ballads, and lyrical examinations of loss. Later records like Fox Confessor Brings the Flood and Hell On continued to explore these themes, not from a macabre fascination, but from a deeply spiritual place of questioning. Case has spoken openly about growing up surrounded by instability and hardship, a childhood where survival required adaptability and resilience. "You notice death earlier when life isn't easy," she once explained. "It's not abstract, it's there, it's present, it shapes you." That early awareness of fragility seems to have seeded a lifelong ability to see mortality not as an enemy to be ignored, but as a constant companion that forces us to appreciate what we have. Her music often reflects this duality. In songs like, I Wish I Was the Moon, listeners hear both lament and transcendence, an aching desire that acknowledges sorrow but refuses to stay in despair. For Case, beauty and grief are intertwined. The gift of perspective. When Case says, death gives us so many gifts, she isn't romanticizing tragedy. Rather, she is pointing to the ways in which endings sharpen our vision. Loss reminds us of the impermanence of everything, from relationships to opportunities to the fleeting wonder of a sunset. That knowledge can be devastating, but it can also awaken us to a deeper appreciation of life's fleeting treasures. Death shows you how precious time is, Case reflected. It teaches you to hold people close, to not waste your words, to see beauty in the small things. Without that awareness, you might drift through life asleep. This way of thinking resonates strongly in her songwriting, where natural imagery often mirrors human mortality. Rivers dry up, forests burn, animals perish, but in each loss, something new emerges. It's not unlike the cycle of seasons, winter's barrenness making way for spring's renewal. To Case, death is not only an ending, but also a reminder of the endless transformations that shape existence. Grief is a creative force. Case is hardly alone in exploring how sorrow fuels art. But few artists articulate it with such raw clarity. She has described grief not as a roadblock to creativity, but as an engine. Sorrow is a form of love, she has said, echoing the idea that we only grieve what we cherish. That understanding allows her to transform personal pain into universal stories, songs that offer catharsis for both the writer and the listener. Take her 2013 album, The Worse Things Get, the harder I fight, the more I love you. The title itself is a manifesto of sorts. Struggle and suffering don't extinguish love, they intensify it. Many of the songs on that record were written in the aftermath of personal losses, yet they pulse with vitality and defiance. They don't wallow, they wrestle. Case has explained that writing through grief is not about making something beautiful out of pain, but rather about telling the truth. Art doesn't erase sorrow, she said. But it can give it shape. It can make it less lonely. Finding community in loss. Another gift of death, Case suggests, is the way it connects us to others. Grief, though deeply personal, is also universal. We all encounter it eventually. When we share stories of loss, through music, conversation, or ritual, we remind each other that no one walks through sorrow alone. In her career, Case has often used her platform to create that kind of communal recognition. Fans write to her about how certain songs helped them through deaths of loved ones, breakups, or personal reckonings. That's the best part of what I do, Case has said. It's not about me singing my pain, it's about someone hearing it and realizing theirs matters too. This reciprocity, where an artist's grief becomes a listener's mirror, is a kind of quiet revolution against silence and isolation. It turns sorrow into solidarity. Death as teacher. Case's reflections also touch on the way death forces us to confront ourselves. Mortality is the great equalizer, stripping away illusions of permanence, control, and ego. For Case, this confrontation is not something to run from, but something to learn from. Death teaches you humility, she explained. It doesn't matter how much money you make, how many records you sell, none of that protects you. And that's liberating in a way. It makes you ask what actually matters. This perspective has informed not only her music but her personal choices. Case has spoken about retreating from the spotlight, prioritizing her mental health, and spending more time in nature. These decisions, she says, stem from understanding that life is short and should not be squandered on things that don't bring meaning. Embracing the mystery. For all her reflections, Case doesn't claim to have tidy answers about death. In fact, part of what she embraces is the mystery itself. Death, like life, resists full understanding. But within that uncertainty, there is room for awe. She often turns to natural metaphors, stars collapsing, animals migrating, forests regrowing, to express the vastness of cycles beyond our comprehension. Death is part of the same mystery that makes the universe beautiful, she said. You don't have to solve it to respect it. This openness to mystery allows her to inhabit sorrow without being consumed by it. She doesn't deny the pain of loss, but she also doesn't deny the strange beauty that can accompany it, the tenderness of a goodbye, the intimacy of shared grief, the clarity of what matters most. Why her words resonate now. In a world grappling with collective grief, whether from the pandemic, climate change, or personal tragedies, Case's perspective feels particularly relevant. Her insistence on looking directly at death, rather than turning away, offers an alternative to the fear and denial that often dominate cultural conversations. By framing death as a giver of gifts, she challenges us to shift our perspective. What if sorrow isn't only destructive? What if grief is also a teacher? What if beauty and death are not opposites, but companions? It's a radical reframing, but one that resonates deeply in an era where people are searching for meaning amid chaos. Conclusion. Singing through the sorrow. Neko Case has never been an artist to sugarcoat reality. Her music doesn't offer easy resolutions, and her reflections on death are no different. Yet in her willingness to face sorrow, she uncovers a profound truth, that loss and beauty are inseparable, and that death, far from being only an end, can also awaken us to life's greatest treasures. Death gives us so many gifts if you're willing to look at it, she reminds us. Those gifts are not always easy to unwrap, sometimes they arrive in the form of tears, silence, or aching absence. But they also arrive as gratitude, compassion, clarity, and a deeper connection to the fragile, fleeting miracle of being alive. In her songs and her words, Case invites us to accept the full spectrum of existence, joy and sorrow, life and death, beauty and loss. And in doing so, she shows us that within the sorrow, there is always a song waiting to be sung.